All right, we're going to talk about quarterbacks and tight ends for week 9. Yeah, National Tight End Day. It was fun, but it's over. Man, don't you wish we could have National Tight End Day every day?
Actually, I have a better idea. How about a National No Tight Ends Day?
Well, like it or not, you probably have to start a tight end in your fantasy league and a quarterback. Who do you start in week 9? Got you covered. We're going to talk about every matchup and every player that matters. Now, we do have 4 teams that are on bye. It's the Eagles, the Bucks, the Browns, and the Jets. Some players you don't have to think about. If you got these quarterbacks or tight ends, you put them in your lineup, no questions asked. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, welcome to the list, Drake May, Lamar Jackson if he plays, and Jaden Daniels if he plays. And then at tight end, Trey McBride and Tyler Warren. Do us a quick favor, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, just click that subscribe button. We are on the way to 100K. We want you to join us and be a part of the Endgame community. First game of the week on Thursday night, it's the Ravens and the Dolphins. So look, we definitely should have Lamar Jackson, unless at the last minute, something happens and he doesn't start and it's Tyler Huntley instead. Where have I heard that before? Oh wait, it just happened. But look, we're supposed to have Lamar Jackson back, but what if he doesn't play? What do you think about Snoop?
Yeah, we're supposed to have Lamar back. Let's hope we get Lamar back. But I'll say if they bamboozle us again and pull the rug out from under us again, I think Snoop's okay in Superflex because it's the Dolphins. And then Mark Andrews, with or without Lamar, I'm just going to say a streamer. Like, he's one of these, he either scores and you feel good or he doesn't and you wish you didn't start him type of tight ends.
Yeah, look, Huntley was definitely better than Cooper Rush, and he wasn't too bad. You can't tell me this Dolphins defense is better than the Bears defense, so he's a pretty good super flex option, maybe even a streamer if you need it. Mark Andrews, barely a streamer. I don't think it matters who the quarterback is, just not getting enough targets. As far as the Dolphins go, well, there's no tight end to think about. Darren Waller still out with injury, but what about Tua Tagovailoa? Just when we thought we could bury him for fantasy purposes, a 4-touchdown performance, and hey, this Ravens defense is actually bad.
It's actually bad, but it got a little better last week. It's starting to get healthier, so I'm not going to chase that big game last week. Not thinking, oh, you got to start him now. No, I'm still just going to say super flex here.
This feels much like Matthew Stafford a couple weeks ago against Baltimore, like a trap, and not just because the Ravens defense can suddenly be good at times. They haven't been good, but Tua can definitely go back to being bad. Remember how the previous 2 weeks he had thrown no touchdowns and 3 interceptions? Look, I don't know exactly which Tua will show up. He's okay. He's a maybe solid streamer, like he should be solid, but I don't feel great about it. Look, I think that if you've got a better choice, I would rather go with someone else, but maybe he'll perform. Let's talk about the Bears at the Bengals now. Speaking of that Baltimore defense, well, Caleb Williams really did nothing against them last week, and now all of a sudden, we got to worry, is Caleb Williams startable? Because ever since the Bears discovered that they could run the ball, Caleb Williams has not done a whole lot passing.
No, he hasn't, but this is a great matchup against the Bengals. I mean, look, Justin Fields last week. Like, well, look at that. He was pretty good. I got to take a chance on Caleb, but I can't get too excited here. I'm just going to say a streamer. And then Colston Loveland, the tight end, like, even with Cole Kmet out last week, didn't really do a whole lot. Remember, that was the first game Cole Kmet missed of his entire career. Probably going to play this week, so I'm not starting any Bears tight end, even against the Bengals.
As far as tight end, I'm not sure about Kmet, but look, Loveland has been slowly increasing his participation here in the passing game. I got to think he's at least streamable against the absolute worst defense against tight ends. I could take a shot on Loveland. I really don't want to with Caleb Williams. Look, it isn't just the last couple of games where he's had no touchdowns because they've been running the ball. This is extended farther back. Over the last 4 games, he has a total of 2 passing touchdowns. And look, he's still one of the worst passers in terms of catchable balls being thrown here. I haven't seen that step forward from last year. I'm starting to get concerned about Caleb Williams in the present and the future. I think he's a super flex option because of the matchup, but honestly, this might be another game where DeAndre Swift carries the offense. Now, on the Bengals side, I have no such concerns with Joe Flacco. And I'm being serious. Look, Joe Flacco in 3 games with the Bengals has thrown multiple touchdowns in all 3 and not a single interception yet. He's got to be solid, right?
Yeah, I'm coming around. I guess Joe Flacco has to be solid at this point. And look, the nice thing about Joe Flacco is his Bengals defense is so bad that they're never in a position where they can't stop throwing the football. They have to just keep throwing the football, so he's got to be solid. And then look, Noah Fant, I think you got to consider him a streamer. In the last 2 games, he ranks 3rd in targets on the team here. So I think he's at least got to be a streamer this week.
Yeah, exactly. Gesicki is on IR. Fant has been involved. Didn't cash in the end zone last week. He could do it in this game against a pretty subpar defense. So, yeah, agree. I mean, Flacco is solid for sure, and Fant is a streamer. Got plenty more matchups to talk about, but first, make sure you get into the Underdog app and set your picks for Week 9. And if you haven't done that yet, you haven't signed up even for Underdog, well, this is the best time because you still get deposit match up to $1,000 worth of bonus cash for your first deposit if you use code ENDGAME in the promo code section. And you also get a free pick every week. There's a gimme, and new customers also get $100 of bonus funds put into the account as soon as you spend $5 towards any pick. You already get the free pick, you get free cash. Try it now if you haven't yet. Sign up on Underdog and use code ENDGAME when you check out. Now, when the Vikings face the Lions this week, we're going to see the return of J.J. McCarthy. Carson Wentz was just placed on season-ending IR, so definitely not going to see him. All right, so with McCarthy back, this is first game action in a while. He's got a good offense. It's a good situation, but how good do you feel about him and his tight end, T.J. Hockenson?
We can't feel good really about either of them. I'll say Hockenson, he's kind of like Mark Andrews for me. Like, it's one of these tight ends, you're really hoping he scores a touchdown. Otherwise, you're probably going to be disappointed. J.J. McCarthy, this is actually a good spot. I mean, Detroit's a bit of a pass funnel, the 7th highest pass rate over expectation allowed. Vikings probably going to be playing from behind. I'm going to be guessing on the road in Detroit, but the risk is so high here. I mean, if you want to stash him, especially in your super flex leagues, fine, but I'm sitting him this week if I can.
I'm not taking a chance here, no matter how deep the league. I'm not a McCarthy hater or anything like that. I just never felt like he was a guy who projected to be a franchise quarterback, maybe even a regular starter. I need to see something, just something. We have nothing to go off of, really. We have one game where he was very mixed in terms of results, and then a game where he was bad and got injured. So, I need to see, not even just this week he'd do something, but probably multiple weeks. And we definitely know what we're getting for Detroit. Jared Goff, Sam Laporta, at home. I mean, definitely a high floor. How high is the ceiling?
I don't know if they have huge ceilings this week. Like, it feels like the Vikings should be good against the pass, but Justin Herbert and Aronde Gadsden just lit them up last week. So, at home, you got to feel pretty good here. I'm going to say both very solid this week.
Yeah, very solid. Home golf is good. Well, if I have issues or concerns, at least, with that Vikings offense with McCarthy, again, I wonder, is the run game just going to dominate here? I don't know that Goff does have a super high ceiling, but solid because of the floor.
Do you want to get advice from Pierre and myself at the tip of your fingertips? Start sit, waiver wire, trades, and more? Well, you can do all of this and more on our new app, Draft Lane. We have the ability to view your roster, waivers, and more to give you the right feedback to make the perfect choice. Download Draft Lane from the App Store or Google Play, or use these handy QR codes. And first-time users can use code ENDGAME to get 10 free credits and get your questions answered today.
This week, the Panthers on the road at Lambeau Field to take on that Packers defense. So we did have Andy Dalton back at quarterback last week because Bryce Young with that high ankle sprain. He might give it a go this week, and we're gonna have to see how this plays out throughout the practice week. So if Bryce Young does make a comeback, how do you feel?
Bryce Young, Andy Dalton on the road against the Packers, does not matter to me not starting them.
Well, that was easy. I don't see how anybody can consider Dalton after last week. We thought maybe he'd have enough, saved up for one game, and he doesn't. It's like he's done. Like Bryce Young, maybe super flex because they'll have to pass it enough. Just barely super flex, but I wouldn't feel great. And then as far as the Packers offense, you got to feel good about Jordan Love these days. I mean, look, Josh Jacobs keeps scoring, but it feels like they're leaning a little bit more on the passing game these days. but what do you think he does in this matchup? Does he need to pass that much?
Yeah, not nearly as good of a spot as he had last week against that Steelers defense here, but also he's been so good. I mean, how do you really bench him? I'm going to say solid. And then Tucker Kraft, I know he's coming off a massive game. He's had some nice games. I think this is just going to be a good game for Tucker Kraft this week. He's been much better against man than zone. Panthers very zone heavy, but can you really bench Tucker Kraft? No. Solid start.
Look, in my mind at this point, Tucker Kraft is almost a must start at tight end. Dare I make the same mistake twice in saying playing this Panthers defense horrible against the tight end? This is different. Tucker Kraft not injured like Dalton Kincaid. Tucker Kraft has been super involved all season long. If I have Kraft, he's a strong start to me. The Broncos facing the Texans this week. So although they're still in the state of Texas here, Houston instead of Dallas, they're pretty much going from one end to the other in terms of defensive matchup, going from that Cowboys defense to the Texans defense. I think we could see much different results for guys like Bo Nix, Evan Ingram.
Yeah, you cannot feel nearly as good about Bo Nix here on the road against the Texans. I'm going to say very low-end streamer here. The only reason he's even in the streaming conversation is it's how many quarterbacks do you really feel better than Bo Nix? We're going to talk about some super flex options that I'm not starting those guys over Bo Nix, so barely a streamer here. And then, I will say this about Evan Ingram. Texans play the first most zone, and he actually leads the team in targets per out run versus zone. But that being said, it's still risky here, so he's just a streamer.
I will go lower on Bo Nix. I think super flex only. There are some other quarterbacks with more upside. Again, Houston, legit against the pass. 6 touchdowns to 7 interceptions allowed to quarterbacks this season. Fewer than a touchdown passing per game. And, this is a team that is good, but also inconsistent at times on offense. So Bo Nix, I do not feel good about this week. Evan Ingram, he's just been mid. I mean, look, he's getting you a floor. He's not scoring touchdowns. I think he almost got in the end zone last week. I think he got tackled at the 1, but what is the upside here? I think he's barely a streamer. Now for Houston, I mean, there's a lot of questions here. So first of all, how did CJ Stroud have his best game of the season with his best receiver out? That's question number 1. Is his best receiver, Nico Collins, going to play this week? That's question number 2. And then can he somehow pull it off against this Denver defense? That's number 3.
Well, if there's a plus side, it's that Pat Surtain is going to miss, so that helps here. But you still can't feel good against this Denver defense. I'm going to just say super flex here for CJ Stroud. And then Dalton Schultz, had to be one of the biggest disappointments of Week 8. Get off my fantasy team, Dalton Schultz. Not starting you.
All right, so he's on the dead to you list now. I get it. He probably should be against Denver. You probably shouldn't even think about it. But I guess if he plays, I could consider streaming him. I'm not buying into the CJ Stroud thing. I'm not sure how he pulled it off, but I don't expect it against this Denver defense that still leads the league in sacks. He's super flex only. This week, the Falcons taking on the Patriots, joining that must-start list. At this point, if you have Drake May, why look elsewhere? Just start him. Now, as far as the Atlanta Falcons, well, we're not sure where to look because, Michael Penix Jr. had been the starter, taking over for Kirk Cousins. He missed last week. We saw Kirk Cousins back. We weren't exactly thrilled with that. Especially if you had any Falcons on your team for fantasy. So, at this point, look, what are we getting here? Is it going to be Penix? Is he back? Is Cousins back? And how drastically does it change the offense for this week for a guy like Kyle Pitts?
Well, I think it certainly matters for Kyle Pitts. I think after what we saw last week, I'd probably prefer Penix. But, Pitts wasn't bad last week, and the Patriots do allow the 5th most points to tight end. So I think you could stream him, although, London might be back. That could knock him down a little bit. I'm going to say here, whether it's Penix or Cousins, it doesn't matter to me. On the road against the Patriots, I'm not starting either of these guys.
Yeah, let's just make it simple. Why bother? You don't have to start a Falcons quarterback, and even if you're, desperate, honestly, you could do worse than looking for somebody, on the waiver wire. Bryce Young if he plays, Andy Dalton. No, okay, never mind. But look, I don't want to start a Falcons quarterback. I don't think either way, no matter who starts. And Kyle Pitts did benefit from London being out. He's barely a streamer here. And speaking of, that's where I'm at with Hunter Henry. I mean, I feel like this is every year a trap. Like, we have high hopes for him, and he just does the same thing, right? He scores once in a while, he shows up once in a while. He's like barely a streamer.
Not even a streamer for me this week. Falcons' fewest fantasy points to tight ends. He had one catch last week. It happened to be a 7-yard touchdown. Like, this is as risky as it gets. No thank you.
All right, now let's talk about the 49ers and the Giants. So, there's a chance we do see Brock Purdy, like an actual chance we see Brock Purdy back at quarterback this week. But, I mean, this is probably going to be very late in the week kind of thing. So, Purdy, Mac Jones, preference?
I think you got to prefer Purdy, but I don't feel great about either. I'm going to say Purdy just a streamer. Look, the Giants are allowing the 4th highest pass rate over expectation, the 3rd most points to quarterbacks. He's got a healthy Kittle, he's got a healthy CMC, but how healthy is he? So just a streamer. If it's Mac Jones, nope, just super flex. Like, I mean, what are we even getting from Mac Jones anymore? And then George Kittle, like, I know he hasn't necessarily gone crazy. Had a good but not great game on National Tight Ends Day, but it doesn't matter. If I got George Kittle, I'm starting him. He's a strong start.
Yeah, I mean, Kittle is like pretty much a must start, although you can't feel as good as you'd like to. But come on, how many tight ends are you going to put over him? And then I'm just going to put both 49er quarterbacks as super flex options because even though, yes, Purdy does seem to actually be the better quarterback based on how Mac Jones has fallen back to earth, how good can you feel about the fact that we don't even know if he's ready to play? That toe's still bothering him. I'd rather not risk it. Speaking of falling back down to earth, you feel like some of this Jackson Dart hype is dying out already? I mean, he's been okay, but what is he really doing for you in fantasy?
Well, he runs, right? He ran in a touchdown last week. He gives you that rushing, and with Scadaboo out, maybe he runs even more here, but this is a tough spot against the 49ers. Kind of like what I said about Bo Nix, I'm going to say a streamer because really, I mean, how many quarterbacks do you feel better about than Jackson Dart this week? So he's risky, but he's a streamer.
Probably enough that I'll say I'd rather stream somebody else. Again, it's interesting because usually those rushing quarterbacks, like, oh, they give you the high ceiling. For him, like, that gives him the floor because he doesn't do a whole lot passing. So, and just so many injuries, a lot of it's not his fault, right? No Neighbors, now no Scadaboo. I don't know. I mean, I'm just not feeling a high enough upside here to say he's more than super flex. Next up, we got the Colts taking on the Steelers. Look, rookie Tyler Warren is a must start at tight end. Keep him in your lineup. You probably could keep Daniel Jones in your lineup this week. Man, that Steelers defense is on pace to be probably one of the worst that I can even remember in my lifetime.
Yeah, I don't see how Daniel Jones is not a strong start. Steelers' 7th highest pass rate over expectation allowed. They just lost their starting safety, Deshaun Elliott, who's one of the few bright spots on that defense this year. They're allowing the 2nd most points to QBs. The Colts score 30 points every week. Like, it's no big deal. This is just what they do. Daniel Jones, a strong start this week.
Yeah, I'm almost there. I'm going to put high-end solid only because, again, I just don't know if the Steelers are going to keep this game competitive. Seriously, they just might not. So, I mean, he's got a super high floor here. You got to like Jones if you got him. Do you like Aaron Rodgers this week? And I ask that because even though it definitely looks like a bad matchup, maybe with how good the Colts offense has been, Rodgers just has to do something through sheer volume to keep up.
Yeah, that's what you're hoping for here, right? You're hoping for volume, coming from behind, but what really is the upside here this week? Super flex only. And then I will say Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth, they're risky, but if you're desperate, you can stream these guys. The Colts, surprisingly, have not been good against tight ends, allowing the 5th most points. But do you really feel great having either of these guys in your lineup?
No, actually, I didn't even think about those tight ends. Freiermuth had his one game. Good for him. He'll probably just go back to being irrelevant. Jonnu Smith hasn't even been involved as we thought he would be. Yeah, I'm going to have to look somewhere else. Now we got the Chargers at the Titans. So, got Justin Herbert back on his game. Looks like he's rolling pretty strong these days. And then Rondé Gadsden. I mean, look, 3 games in a row. He's averaged, as I had mentioned earlier, 103 yards over the last 3 games. I mean, is this going to continue?
I don't know if it's going to continue, but I think you got to find out with him in your lineup. This is what I said last week when we got all the Oronde Gadsden questions. I was like, you have to put him in your lineup and find out. And you're glad you did. You have to do it again this week. Not only that, Titans play the 7th most zone, 78% of the time. He's actually 2nd on the team in targets per route run against zone and 1st in yards per route run. He's got to be a strong start. Justin Herbert also has to be a strong start. Titans' 3rd highest pass rate over expectations. And now somehow, as if he didn't have enough weapons, he even has another weapon.
Yeah, like Herbert is definitely a strong start in this matchup, no doubt. I'm going to kind of contradict myself here, just a warning. So Gadsden, I feel like you're right. You pretty much need to start him if you have him, because if you picked him up, you probably weren't great at tight end. So he's very, very solid here. But I think if you have Gadsden, I'm going to sell high because, let's be honest, he's not going to do this every week the whole rest of the season. So if you need help elsewhere, just consider it, right? Just consider it. And on the Tennessee side, well, Cam Ward's still the quarterback. That's not going to change. Chig Okonkwo at tight ends. Look, rookie Gunnar Helm getting a little bit involved. He catch a touchdown there, but look, do you want any part of this offense?
No, against this Chargers defense, no thank you.
No, there's no reason. This week, the Saints get to travel to LA and face the Rams. And look, so we've gone Spencer Rattler, now Tyler Shook, and then back and forth. And it's like, who knows who the quarterback is going to be by the 4th quarter of this week, and who really cares?
Yeah, I really don't care. Like you said, it doesn't even matter who starts the game because we don't even know who's going to potentially finish the game. Rams allowing the 9th fewest points to QBs. No thank you to these guys. But I will say this. Juwan Johnson, you might want to consider streaming him again. He's quietly has 10 catches and 132 yards over the last 2 games, although the Rams are tough against tight ends, but he's gotten involved again.
Yeah, just when you forgot about him. I don't know. I think it's going to take maybe one of these receivers getting traded, as has been rumored. I'm still going to sit Juwan Johnson just to be safe, and pretty much every Saint who isn't Chris Olave. Now, I do feel pretty good about Matthew Stafford. Mentioned him as my favorite streamer of the week, if you're able to grab him, that is. I mean, look, the Saints have not been good defensively all season long, and now he's got a week to rest.
Yeah, a week to rest. But look, the Saints, the last couple weeks, they've been not bad against quarterbacks. I don't know how, but they haven't been. But at home, off the bye against the Saints, you got to feel good here. He's solid.
And he should have Puka Nacua back. And yeah, I mean, look, the risk, if there is one with Stafford, is they just don't need to throw the ball. That's why I really like Kyron this week. But still, that floor is high enough. He can get away with throwing 3 or 4 touchdowns, even if the yardage is low. So he's just very solid. All right, now let's talk Jaguars against the Raiders this week. All right, so it will be interesting to figure out who exactly Trevor Lawrence is throwing to more. A lot of talk about how this offense might look coming off the bye. What are your expectations for T-Law specifically?
Well, my expectations are that he's going to be okay, but probably not great. This is a good matchup. Raiders allowing the 2nd highest pass rate over expectation. He had 258 yards and 296 yards in the last 2 games before the bye. Just not throwing a lot of touchdowns here, so what's really the upside? But it's a good matchup, so I'm going to say low-end, risky, solid.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And, you know, at what point this season has T-Law really had a big game, right? We're showing big upside. And the thing is, this Raiders defense isn't great, but their offense is worse, and that's why I feel like they're just not going to need to pass the ball enough. I think he's just a streamer. And then I can't even go that high. Like, honestly, I need to see a big turnaround before I even think about Geno Smith. This guy has had 1 touchdown over the past 3 games, 10 interceptions on the season. I mean, this doesn't just get magically fixed during the bye week. Does Brock Bowers' knee get magically fixed?
Let's hope Brock Bowers' knee is magically fixed and he's playing. If he doesn't play this week, it's like, what's going on here? This is full-on panic mode. I think if Brock Bowers plays, you play him. He's a strong start, even with as bad as Geno's been. But Geno Smith, no chance here.
Well, clearly I want no part of Geno. If Bowers does play and he's good to go, which I hope, I mean, yeah, I know if I got him, I'm probably starting him. But I just don't feel great because Well, because of Geno Smith. So I'll just say he should be solid. Now we're hoping there's a lot of fancy goodness in this matchup. Got the Chiefs taking on the Bills. If you got either quarterback, you definitely want them in your lineup. That's Mahomes and Josh Allen. Look, Travis Kelce, looking, dare I say, like vintage Kelce this past week. He's been coming on, even with Rashee Rice back. What do you think he does against the Bills?
Well, this is a tough spot. Bills' second toughest versus tight ends, and we've got 2 games with Rashee Rice. The first game, he barely was involved, and then last game, he had a monster game. But I will say this, the thing about Kelce, like, versus, like, the guys like the Andrewses and the Hunter Henrys, like, he's got upside those guys just don't have. Yes, he's risky that he could get, like, have one of those games where he just completely busts, but he's got upside those guys don't have. So I think he's got to be solid, but, like, lower end solid this week.
I feel like he's got to be at least solid based on target share. I don't have any stats to prove this, and I'm probably going to have to do some research now. I'm thinking about it. I feel like in those primetime games, right, they make a point of getting Kelce more involved. This isn't one of those. It's a decent defense, so let's just say he should be solid. If you got him, you should feel good enough. I wish I felt better about Dalton Kincaid. I actually, I was kidding. I meant to say Tucker Kraft in the Boom video last week. Just the wrong K tight end. Seriously though, Dalton Kincaid, you got to worry that he's not 100% healthy because limited snaps in that game after limited practices. So does that mean he has limited value this week?
Well, if once again he's not really practicing and he's on the injury report, I'm just going to say no to Kincaid here. I'm not going to risk it. But look, if he's practicing fully and he's off the injury report, I still feel pretty good here. I think you can stream him, but only if he's fully healthy.
Exactly. Lesson learned there. I mean, look, we never know with injuries, right? We never know if we're getting the truth. But there is a concern that we've seen rookie Jackson Hawes get more snaps, and that he's been the best overall tight end on that team. Dawson Knox is still there. So even though Kincaid does have some really good games, I don't know if this will be one of them against that Chiefs defense. So he's a risky streamer, but again, only if he's fully healthy. Sunday night, we'll see the Seahawks facing the Commanders. Let's hope that Jaden Daniels is fully healthy. If so, you should just start him. What about Sam Darnold? Now, I think this could be kind of a sneaky good option for you, but do you feel the same way?
I do. Outside of that Houston game, Sam Darnold has been mostly good this year. And, if JD's healthy and let's hope Terry's healthy, this could be like a sneaky shootout potential game here. So I think Darnold's got to be solid this week.
Yeah, and even if he doesn't necessarily have the highest ceiling, right, well, what you just said, let's hope JD and McLaurin and all these players for Washington are healthy and we can actually have a little bit back and forth. But at the very least, Darnold has been very solid all season long, other than the really tough matchups, so I think he'll be solid again. If JD has a setback or is unable to go, it's going to be more Marcus Mariota. How would you feel about him and tight end Zach Ertz?
You can't feel good. I mean, it's a better spot than last week against the Chiefs, but only barely better here. He does run a little bit, so you could consider him in Superflex. And then Zach Ertz, yeah, Seattle hasn't been great versus tight ends, but, again, if Terry's healthy, that knocks him down a little bit. Mariota knocks him down a little bit. Just a streamer.
Yeah, I don't know. Against this pretty stingy Seattle defense, I don't expect much better than what we saw against the Chiefs last week, which is a guy you really don't want to start. So I'm just going to say sit if Mariota's back in there. And Zach Ertz, I hope it's JD, but even if it's not, I guess you could stream him because Seattle isn't as tough against tight ends. The final game of Week 9 is going to be the Cardinals at the Cowboys on Monday night. A lot of you glad to see Trey McBride back off a bye. He's one of the very few must-starts at tight end. Do we feel the same about Kyler Murray expected to return? Look, I'm not the biggest Kyler fan. This is the Cowboys defense, though. So how high can you go?
Well, you can't go too high here. He's coming off a foot injury. We don't know quite how healthy he is, but it is the Cowboys. You got to feel pretty good. I'm going to say streamer, but probably like my favorite streamer this week.
Got to agree. Come on. This defense is pretty much a joke here. So Kyler, maybe you won't light it up, but he's definitely going to do something against this defense. So high-end streamer, totally agree there. Now, not the best game for Dak Prescott, predictably. It was a tough matchup against Denver. Does he right the ship here? against the Cardinals. And then, well, what are we doing with Jake Ferguson at this point? Yeah, he was definitely disappointing on National Tight End Day.
He was definitely disappointing. I talked about him on the buy low video. I think this is a great time to sell high on Jake Ferguson while you can. He only has an 8.3% target share in the 2 games since CeeDee Lamb has been back. He has taken the big hit here. Look, he does get a good matchup this week, though. The Cardinals have struggled against tight ends, so maybe he could score. I'm still going to say solid for him. And look, Dak still has to be solid. You take out last week, Dak has mostly been great. We thought he was inevitable even against the Broncos. Okay, we were probably a little too optimistic on Dak last week. At home against the Cardinals, he should be solid.
Yeah, I feel like this is a good bounce back for Dallas. I mean, yeah, it was pretty obvious Ferguson was going to take a hit with CeeDee Lamb back, but look, he still should be better than the majority of tight ends out there. Last week was last week, right? It was a brutal matchup. And then as far as Dak, again, solid. Just won't be his best game, won't be his worst game. So he's startable in most single QB leagues. All right, well, that's it for quarterbacks and tight ends, but you know we got videos for you every single day. Of course, running back, wide receiver start sit is already out, and so much more. Check it all out right here.